Hey guys, and welcome to this week's episode of the Sports Sermon. I'm Jason Gandhi.
I'm Dan Majors.
And I'm Joe Mann.
And before we get started on our college football, we want to introduce the newest member of the Sports Sermon, Joe Mara. As you just heard, he will be joining us as part of the Sports Sermon team. He goes to Westfield High School, and it's glad to have you as part of the team, Joe. So, let's get going into some college football. Dan, you're kind of our college football guru on the show. You know what's going on all the time. So what are we looking for this year's college football?
Well, first of all, make sure you're on the lookout on Twitter for my preseason rankings. I will be releasing the next 5 teams every Saturday leading up to opening weekend. So last year was a great year with many great games, and it came down to Clemson and Alabama in the title. It was a very high-scoring game with 2 Heisman candidates facing off. Deshaun Watson led the Tigers with 405 yards passing and 4 touchdowns, but the Heisman winner, Derrick Henry, had 36 carries for 158 yards and 3 touchdowns and led the Tide to their 4th national title in the past 7 years. So that leads us to the 2016 season where the reigning Heisman winner, Derrick Henry, is now gone, and that leaves some great players to take the trophy home. Jason, what is your prediction for the Heisman this year?
You know, you just talked about Clemson, and I got to go with the Clemson quarterback, Deshaun Watson. He threw for just over 4,000 yards last year and 35 touchdowns and completed most of his passes, having a 68% completion percentage. And he ran for 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. So with all that versatility, and I think it's honestly going to come down to how he plays against the tough Florida State team. I think if he has a great game against Florida State and Clemson plays like we all expect him to, goes to the college football playoff, I have no doubt in my mind that Deshaun Watson, who got left out last year, will be the Heisman for 2016. Joe, what do you think about your Heisman prediction?
I really like Christian McCaffrey. I was a fan last year. It's insane what he's able to do. He's not like a big back. He's just really fast. He can get receiving yards, rushing yards, and I think he broke that all-purpose record last year of Barry Sanders, and I think he'll continue that trend, and he'll win the Heisman this year.
Yeah, I definitely. Dan, go.
Well, I gotta go with. I gotta agree with Jason here. Deshaun Watson. This guy led a loaded Clemson Tiger team to the national title and put up some great. Put up some great numbers. He threw for 4,000 yards and 35 touchdowns, along with 1,000 yards rushing and 12 scores on the ground. Now, you could easily take Christian McCaffrey or Leonard Fournette. I think Stanford and LSU will have solid seasons, but without a good quarterback, I feel like they could put up better numbers than last year, but not enough to beat Watson.
Yeah, I agree. I think McCaffrey is definitely going to struggle just because he doesn't have a quarterback, and so I think his stats are going to do fine. But then when you look at his overall team, I think Stanford won't be that good. And I think since Clemson, in my opinion, is going to be the number 1 team this year, I see Deshaun Watson definitely being the Heisman. So.
Now, yeah, go ahead.
No, you're good, Dan. Go.
Well, my dark horse for the Heisman this year has got to be whoever the Notre Dame quarterback will be. It's most likely Deshaun Kaiser, even though I think Zaire should be starting. But those guys have unbelievable arms, and Kaiser can be very physical. And then you got Zaire, who has great speed, and, in my opinion, more talent. But these guys have the best offensive line in the country in front of them with Torrey Hunter to throw to, who will have a breakout year. So whoever the quarterback is, they will have a great season and put up some great numbers.
See, Dan, I get where you're coming from, but I cannot get on board with the Notre Dame quarterback as the Heisman candidate. I don't see either of them making it even to the finalists, like being in the top 3. Honestly, just because like you said, you don't know who's going to start. And I wouldn't be surprised if Brian Kelly switches it up throughout the year and has Zaire and Kaiser both play a little bit. And so I think both of their stats are going to hurt. And also Notre Dame's schedule is down from what it usually is. They don't have too many tough games as they usually do. So I think that'll definitely hurt their national exposure, as well as if they split reps during the season, I think their stats will be down. And I don't see either quarterback being in the Heisman race. But my dark horse is Juju Smith from USC. He put up just under 1,500 yards and he scored and had 10 touchdowns last year for USC. He's 6'2", so he's definitely got a big body, but he's also super quick, running a just over 4.4 in his 40. And I think what's going to help him the most is kind of what the opposite of what I said about Notre Dame. USC has a lot of big games this year and probably has the toughest, if not second toughest, schedule this year. And I think Juju's going to have a lot of national exposure as they start the year off with number 1 Alabama. And I have them predicted to go to the college football playoff, which you'll hear later. But I think if they go to their expectations that I have for them, and he plays like he did last year, I think Juju Smith from USC wide receiver is my prediction as the dark horse Heisman that could just sneakily get into that race. Joe, who's your dark horse?
Yeah, mine's really out on a limb. I decided to go with Royce Freeman, the running back out of Oregon. Statistically, he was really good last year. He ran for like 142 yards per game. He was fourth in yards total, third in yards per carry, and he has another running back at position with him. I think that if he gets that starting job, Oregon doesn't slide as much as they did last year. He'll definitely take off, and he'll be the dark horse for the Heisman this year.
Yeah, I think Oregon, they could be an interesting team to say the least. I think their schedule has enough opponents where they could possibly have a good year if they survive. But at the same time, Oregon, I don't know if they'll live up to their classic last few years being right up there in contention. So I think that's definitely one to keep on the look for. And speaking of Oregon and being one of those top teams, we all did our college football predictions, our college football playoff predictions. And so, Dan, how about you start us off with what's your college football playoff prediction?
Well, my number one team has got to be Clemson. I think they're the best team in the country this year with a Heisman caliber quarterback and an experienced, high-powered offense that knows how to win football games. They'll have to fill some shoes on the defensive side of the ball, but they should be able to figure it out and be the number one team in the country entering playoff time. Now, my number two team, now this is probably my surprise team of the year, but I've got the Georgia Bulldogs at the 2. They've got a new head coach with Kirby Smart, who came from Alabama as the defensive coordinator. And this is a team that is in the toughest conference in football in the SEC. But when you look at their schedule, you see 4 solid teams. North Carolina, who they start off the year with, could be very tough, but if they don't win that game, then they could still win out and make the playoffs. Then they got Ole Miss, which could be tough, but I think they'll come out with a W. Then you got the most overrated team in college football with Tennessee, and you got Florida, who the Bulldogs should handle pretty well. So for an SEC schedule, that is not very good. So if Georgia can win the SEC East and most likely take on Alabama, I think the Georgia Bulldogs, led by Nick Chubb and the best freshman in football, Jacob Eason, can pull off a big upset to move on to the college football playoff.
Wait a second. What if they lose to Alabama in the college football playoff? Or not in the college football playoff, in the SEC championship?
Then they won't make it. But that's what I'm saying. They will beat Alabama in the SEC championship.
So you predict Georgia has an undefeated season?
No, I think that they might lose. They probably will lose one game. Okay, they will lose one game to, I think, most likely North Carolina.
So you think they start the season off 0-1 and then go undefeated the rest of the way?
Yeah, Ohio State did it 2 years ago.
Yeah, I was clarifying. Okay. Interesting prediction there is the 2 seed. So, I guess that moves on to your number 3 and 4. Do you have Alabama in the college football playoff? No.
Here, yeah.
Let's hear it.
So, I got Oklahoma at the 3. They're led by Baker Mayfield and Samaje Perine. This is a team that has probably the toughest non-conference schedule in the country with Houston and Ohio State. I think Oklahoma will go undefeated in the Big 12 and claim another Big 12 title. I think they will have one blemish with either Houston or Ohio State. but that should definitely be enough to take a spot in the playoffs.
Wait,
Now,
wait. Okay, so Oklahoma, they lost Sterling Shepard. Who makes up for all those catches and touchdowns that Sterling Shepard had on the Oklahoma team?
well, I think Mayfield will he'll distribute it well, and the running game will do well with Samaje Perine, and I
So,
just think Oklahoma.
No star, just kind of spread it around.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think Oklahoma's the best team in the Big 12, and the Big 12 is not that strong, and they'll do just fine, and the Big 12 isn't very good.
Yeah,
so.
the Big 12 definitely is having an off year. Who's your number 4 team?
I gotta go with the Notre Dame Fighting
Oh
Irish.
my gosh.
Now, I bet you're all super surprised, but I've got Notre Dame taking the final spot in the college football playoff. I think the Irish will have maybe the best offense in the country with Kaiser or Zaire and an amazing offensive line. They've got many things to figure out on the defensive side of the ball. Some guys are going to need to step up, but the offense should just dominate and lead the Irish to their first ever college football playoff appearance.
All right. I'm not letting you get away from this. So, Notre Dame makes it into the college football playoff. That means they either go undefeated or a one-loss team.
They got to go undefeated.
There's no way.
No, they can have one loss on the schedule.
Okay. So, you're telling me that with the schedule they play, if they make it the whole year and lose the last game to USC, which I don't think there's any chance they beat USC. I honestly think they'll lose to Miami as well. But let's say they go undefeated and lose to USC the last game of the year. You're telling me that the schedule they have, the college football playoff committee is going to be like, oh yeah, they lost the last game of the year. They don't play in the conference championship, but it's okay because they're Notre Dame and played absolutely nobody during the regular season.
They're at a disadvantage, so they do need that. They need a championship game.
Yeah.
That hurts them like every year, it seems like.
Exactly.
Okay, well, are you saying that if there are 10-2 that are competing to be in the playoff?
Wait, Dan, you cut up. You cut off. Say that again. You cut up.
If there are teams that are 10-2, and Notre Dame is a one-loss team, 11-1, then do you think that they should be in front of Notre Dame?
No, but where's the Big Ten?
No, but you have no Big Ten team. You have Alabama. That means you have Alabama losing 2 games?
Did you just say Notre Dame has no Big Ten team?
I said that
No,
college
no,
football
no
playoff
Big
doesn't
Ten.
have a Big Ten team.
No Big Ten team in the Final Four.
Anyway,
Oh.
but what happens to Alabama too? You have them getting 2 losses because if Alabama and Notre Dame both have 1
Yeah,
loss.
Notre Dame will have, Alabama will have 2 losses on the schedule.
Okay, who is the loss that who does Notre Dame lose to?
Not USC, probably Stanford.
Oh
I
my
think.
gosh. Okay. So, if they lose to Stanford, that means they took on a Michigan State team that's going to have an off year, but they'll be ranked, so that's fine. Then they take on Stanford, then Miami and USC. They have 4 tough games this year. And if they lose one of them,
At NC State will be tough.
why will NC State is not a good team?
Okay, you'll be surprised this year.
Oh my gosh. They will. I'm looking at their schedule, and I don't see them winning more than 7 games. They will go 7-5 at best.
Notre Dame?
No, NC State.
Oh, okay. Well,
Texas, not good. Nevada, trash.
Texas
Duke,
is good.
okay.
I don't know what you're talking about, Jason. That
Texas
a
is not.
tough game.
What did Texas do last year? Please tell me what Texas did last year.
Yeah, they had an off year, but
An off
they
year.
are on the rise.
2014. Let's go back 2 years ago. 2014. They got killed by BYU, lost to UCLA, beat North Texas and Kansas, lost to Baylor, lost to Oklahoma, beat Iowa State, got killed by Kansas State, beat Texas Tech, beat West Virginia, beat Oklahoma State, got killed by TCU, and got killed by Arkansas in their bowl game. That was 2 years ago. Last year, not much better. They got killed by Notre Dame in the first game of the season. Then they destroyed Rice, lost to California, lost to Oklahoma State, got destroyed by TCU 50-7, barely pulled out a win against Oklahoma, beat Kansas State, got shut out against Iowa State, destroyed Kansas, lost by 18 to West Virginia, lost by 3 to Texas Tech, and beat Baylor the last game of the year. That's a good football team?
Okay, well, they're going to be pretty upset how Notre Dame killed them last year. So, be surprised if Texas upsets Notre Dame.
Oh, my.
I mean, don't surprise us.
If Texas upsets Notre Dame, then there's no way they make the college football playoff.
Okay, yeah, but I'm not saying they will.
Okay, so we'll say they beat Texas. Then they beat Nevada because Nevada is trash. Then you've got Michigan State, who's having an off year. You take that, you're 3-0. Then you take Duke, who's not good, 4-0. Syracuse, not good, 5-0. NC State, not good, 6-0. Then you get to Stanford, and you say they lose to Stanford. Dan?
What are you trying to say here?
I'm asking. Say lose to Stanford.
They get college football playoff.
They lose to Stanford. You think they beat Miami and USC?
Yeah.
At USC.
Yeah.
All right.
I think they can do it. They have to have that perfect season. Regardless, I think.
Either a perfect season or every other team has to be off. All the Big Ten has to beat themselves, and Alabama has to have an off year in order for this to happen as 11-1. I'm with Joe. The only realistic way this happens is if they go undefeated.
Okay.
What do you have?
They definitely could.
What do you have Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State doing in the Big Ten? What do they finish? All 10-2?
What?
What about Ohio State and Michigan?
What about them?
If those teams go 11-1 and so is Notre Dame will not get in over them. Right?
No, probably not. But that depends on.
So that's what I'm asking. You have Michigan and Ohio State going 10-2 then, plus Alabama, plus USC not at least going 10-2. I don't know what you have there. Right?
Okay, well, both USC and Alabama play each other, and Michigan and Michigan State, they play each other, and then they're
Michigan, Ohio State.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if someone's got to win the Big Ten there, so that's one team.
If Michigan beats Ohio State, who do they lose to? Who do they lose to twice? Because one of them has to win.
I don't know, Jason. Do you want me to look at the schedule and
Yeah,
tell you?
I want you to tell me who Michigan loses to, 2 games, or Ohio State. Who do you think wins Michigan, Ohio State?
Oh, Ohio State will lose to Oklahoma.
And Michigan?
Yeah.
Okay, so then Michigan wins. So Michigan's got 0 losses. Who do they lose to?
Well, let me get their schedule up.
Alrighty. Joe, you agree with me, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just making sure I'm not going insane here. I just don't see a realistic way this happens unless everyone goes 10-2 basically, or Notre Dame goes undefeated.
They have to go undefeated.
Yeah.
Because they don't have a conference championship.
That's exactly what I'm thinking too. I don't see, because the College Football Playoff Committee has talked about how they need a conference championship, I don't see realistically.
I think the committee just wants like the big name teams, or a big name conference. Like I think a Big Ten team will get in regardless. Like whoever can win that championship will probably get in.
Unless they all go 10-2 like Dan says they will. That's
Yeah.
And the only way that happens is if Michigan State beats Michigan, and then Michigan beats Ohio State, and Ohio State beats Michigan State.
Probably, I'll just give away one of my picks. The 4 seed would be Michigan because I think they'll be good enough this year.
Yeah. I definitely have seen that a lot. I've seen them as the 3 or the 4. I think Michigan's going to be locked and loaded, which pains me to say as a Spartan fan. I hate to see it and hate to hear it.
Their defense is going to be amazing.
Yeah. Who was the number 1 recruit they got? I forget his name.
Rashawn Gary.
Yeah, Rashawn Gary, he's going to be a stud that blocks up the middle. And Michigan's going to be so good. Dan, do you have their schedule up yet?
Yes.
Okay, let's hear it.
Then you guys stop ranting about the Big Ten.
Let's hear it.
Okay, well, it's not that good, but
Mm-hmm.
they could lose to, I don't know, they could lose to Ohio State, and then if they make it to the Big Ten championship game, they could.
You just told me they beat. You just
So-
told me they beat Ohio State.
Or Michigan State.
Daniel, you just told me they beat Ohio State.
Okay, what? What was that?
You told me they beat Ohio State before you went and looked at their schedule. I said, who wins Michigan, Ohio State? And you told me Michigan.
Okay, fine. Michigan loses to Michigan State. They make it to the Big Ten championship and lose there.
To who? Because Ohio State won't be playing them.
Whoever's in it.
Michigan State won't be playing them. You're telling me like
yeah,
an...
they can't play out. My bad, but
I'm just asking.
okay, whatever. I think that they will go to maybe Michigan or Ohio State will get upset by somebody, and then whatever. But
So you see Michigan getting upset and going 10-2?
yeah.
Okay. That's fine. Joe, let's hear your college football predictions.
Okay, number 1 seed, I have Clemson as well. They have lots of people coming back. Sean Watson, they're gonna be good. And then the 2 seed, I have Alabama. I mean, I don't really think not too much discussion there. They just, I don't know how they do it, but someone always shows up at running back or quarterback, and they seem to be good regardless every year. And then the 3 seed, I just went out on a limb, and I'm going with TCU. I think if they can stay healthy, that means they'll be good. They'll TCU.
I mean,
I think if you get rid of the injuries, I mean,
Who's going to play quarterback? Excuse me. Well, do you think Kenny Hill can lead TCU to a college football playoff?
I think if they completely stay healthy, they'll be good.
the only tough team they take on is really Oklahoma. I think they'd have to go undefeated in order to happen. But if you look at their...
that's what I think.
Yeah.
They're going to have to regardless.
Yeah, because they don't have enough opponents where they could afford to lose one game. But if they go undefeated, TCU could realistically make the college football playoff. That's just a matter of how confident are you in TCU.
And then I think the 4th seed is going to be Michigan. Because I just think, like Dan, I think Notre Dame could go undefeated. Yes, I truly believe that's possible. But I think the committee just, bashes on them every year because they don't have a conference championship. And Michigan, they just want a Big Ten team in there, it seems like. So I think Michigan will get in. But I think their defense is going to be really good this year. I think Ohio State's going to be good, but I don't know if they're going to be as good as Michigan this year.
I agree with you that the committee has came out and said they want you to be playing on conference championship weekend. And until Notre Dame either gets in a conference or schedules a game, whether it's against Army or against BYU, an independent team, until they're playing on conference championship weekend, I do not see them getting in the college football playoff until they're 12-0 or get in a conference and play on that weekend.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, it would be nice for Notre Dame to play on a conference championship, but the committee still likes Notre Dame's chances.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that. But I'm just saying it seems to hurt them. It seems to hurt their chances.
Yeah, they have to be.
Okay, yeah, but the first college football playoff that came out last year, the rankings, Notre Dame was ranked 11th in the AP poll. They moved up to 5 in the college football playoff rankings.
Okay.
So are you saying that the college football playoff committee doesn't like Notre Dame?
No, I'm saying...
when it's conference championship week, they seem to because last year they had other teams that performed really well that week, so then they just kind of got left out. So that's how I look at it.
I don't think the committee has any issue with Notre Dame. I don't think they like him or hate him. I think what they're saying is it's not Notre Dame. It's the Big 12, Notre Dame, all those teams, the teams that want to be in contention. The way they get in is if they are undefeated or head and shoulders better than every other 11-1 team. Because the committee does not get to see them on the last weekend when they decide. So they need to be head and shoulders above every other 11-1 team in order to get in or be undefeated, because you're not going to be able to convince the committee that we didn't play on conference championship weekend, but what we did every other week is good enough. They basically came out and said that, and you saw that with TCU and Baylor 2 years ago when they put in a Ohio State team over a TCU and Baylor who didn't play because Ohio State played on conference championship weekend. You there, Dan?
Yeah.
Okay. I cut. It went like silent, so I didn't know if you said anything or whatever. But okay, here are my college football predictions. I've got, like both of you, at the number 1 seed, I've got Clemson, Deshaun Watson, lots of returners, like you guys both said, nothing new to say there. I think they go number 1. Then I think you've got at number 2, like Joe said, I think you got Alabama there. Honestly, I'm not sure how they're going to do it, but they'll figure out a way. They'll get number 2, and their defense is always reloaded and stops like everybody. So I think Alabama, no doubt, is my number 2. But here's when the debate's going to stir at 3 and 4. At number 3, I've got USC. And their schedule is honestly one of the toughest schedules in college football, if not the toughest, as they got to take on Alabama first. They take on Stanford the third week. Then they take on Oregon, UCLA, and end the year with Notre Dame. And they have Cal, Arizona, and other teams in the Pac-12. So I think with all of the tough schedule and the exposure they're going to have, plus they've got, like I said with Juju Smith, they've got a Heisman candidate in my opinion. With all that, I think USC goes 11-1. They beat Alabama, but then they lose to Alabama, but beat Notre Dame the last week, and they go 11-1, and so does Alabama, and that's how I think both teams get in there. And then the 4th seed, I've got Florida State. Florida State has an interesting schedule here. They don't have a super tough schedule, but it's not a terrible schedule. They've got Ole Miss, then they've got North Carolina, then they're at Miami, then they've got Clemson, and they end the year off with Florida. So not a USC type schedule, but I think Dalvin Cook, honestly, if I didn't take Deshaun Watson, he'd be my Heisman candidate. But I think Dalvin Cook's going to be the best running back in college football this year. He's going to beat Leonard Fournette and all that. And whoever decided to be Florida State's quarterback, whether it's Sean McGuire, DeAndre Francois, whichever one it is, they can manage the game enough to put up points and be able to beat those teams. I see Florida State going, honestly, I could see them going undefeated. I think Clemson goes undefeated. I think they go 11-1 and lose to Clemson. But they beat a tough at Miami team. They beat North Carolina and Ole Miss at home. And I think they go to the ACC. I think they get left out of the ACC championship. But because they are 11-1 and their schedule, I think they squeak in there and cause a lot of controversy throughout the college football playoff. So, Dan, you had...
Okay.
What?
Hold on. So you got 2 ACC teams in the college football playoff.
Yes, sir.
And both of them play each other.
Yes, sir.
And then you got Alabama and USC in the playoff. Both of them play each other.
Yes, sir. I think you see 2 rematches.
Okay.
I think you just look at their schedule and look at the body of work, and you will not be able to leave out either team. Maybe the seeding gets scheduled or moved around, like USC's the 4, so that way it's not any rematches, just so that way it creates more hype, which I think is part of what they did with Michigan State, that way they had Alabama and Oklahoma teamed up for the national championship last year. I think you would see something like that where you have USC and Florida State switching positions, so that way you don't see a rematch. But I think those 4 teams are the 4 that get in my opinion.
Jason?
Yes, sir.
I thought you said that you have to play on championship weekend to get in.
I did, except for the fact that Florida State, going 11-1, I think they will look better than Notre Dame, and I think the College Football Committee will look past that and put them in because they beat Ole Miss, they beat North Carolina, and I think they beat a tough Miami team at Miami who finishes in the top 10. I think North Carolina finishes in the top 20, and I see Ole Miss somewhere in that 20 to 25 range. So if they can beat 3 ranked teams, beat a top 10 team at their stadium, and keep it close with Clemson. I could see them beating them, but I'm not sure if they can. And then beat a Florida team at the end of the year. I think the College Football Committee looks at their body of work and puts them in. I think it's a stretch, but I could see it happening.
Okay, well, I mean, the College Football Playoff Committee, they're going to want ratings. The ratings were down from last year. I doubt that they will have 2 rematches.
That's what I'm saying. I could see USC being the 4 seed instead of Clemson, USC, and then Alabama, Florida State. I could see that.
Wait, what was that? You said what?
I could see where I have USC at 3 and Florida State at 4. I could see them switching those 2 and having USC be the 4, so that way they take on Clemson, and then Alabama takes on Florida State, so that way there are no rematches.
So you will have a non-conference champion as a 3 seed.
That's what I'm saying. They might do that just to keep the ratings up, if that's their worry. But I mean, that's where the concern comes. If it's what's more important, a good football game or ratings, and that's up to the College Football Committee.
Okay.
All right, so you had Clemson taking on Notre Dame. Who wins that matchup?
Okay, well, Clemson Notre Dame, it's a rematch from one of the best games in 2015. Clemson played in maybe the biggest game in program history. This game totally changed this program around. The Tigers knocked off the Irish in an instant classic that devastated every Indy fan in the country. Just starts talking about it right now, but Clemson won 24-22 on some stupid coaching mistakes by Brian Kelly, and a stop on a 2-point conversion to win the game. This year, you're probably thinking that I'm going to say it's going to be much different, and the Fighting Irish will get their revenge. But that's not the case. It will be a very high-scoring game, and Deshaun Watson will be just too much for the Irish.
All right, so Clemson moves on. Who wins the 2-3 matchup?
I think experience will show greatly in this one, and Mayfield will lead his Sooners in a blowout. Georgia is more of a year or 2 away from their chance of the title.
So then you've got Clemson, Oklahoma. Who takes the cake?
Well, this is a rematch from the College Football Playoff last year. Both teams are almost equal on both sides, as they both can score points at will. Oklahoma has Mayfield, Keyline, and Nixon that will give the Tigers a lot of problems. But I've got to go with the best team in the country, the Clemson Tigers. Deshaun Watson will put up even better stats than last year, as he had 405 yards and 4 touchdowns. He will dominate Oklahoma on every level, and the Clemson Tigers will be national champions.
All right, I agree with you on that last part that Clemson does win the national championship. I have that as well in my college football playoff. Joe, who wins your matchups in your college football playoff?
Well, it starts off with Clemson, Michigan, and I think Michigan's defense is good. Well, they will be good this year. But I don't know. I think Clemson, they're going to win the whole thing regardless, and I think they beat Michigan pretty handily because I don't know how great Michigan's offense is going to be this year. And then the 2-3, Alabama, TCU. Alabama, they seem to do it every single year. They seem to do something different every year. They get it done regardless. Saban's easily probably the best coach in college football history, and he gets it done against TCU. And then they go on the championship. Clemson, Alabama, rematch of last year, but Clemson's going to get it done this year.
Yeah, I think
Win the whole thing.
Of your 4, I'd agree with every prediction there. I think Clemson would beat Michigan, and Alabama would take home TCU. Dan, you in agreement as well?
What was that?
Would you agree with Joe? Clemson beats Michigan, Alabama beats TCU, and Clemson beats Bama?
Yes. Yes.
All right. So, my college football prediction, I've got Clemson taking on Florida State in a rematch. I think Clemson takes them on. I think this is the first game, as they saw earlier in the season, that Sean McGuire, DeAndre Francois cannot just manage the game, and they've got to be a real college football quarterback that has to make plays on his own. And I think that's going to be too much against the Clemson defense. I think Clemson takes the win against Florida State. And then in the Alabama-USC matchup, I think USC upsets Alabama at the 3-2. I think USC They lost to them the first week. I think with the new coach there, I think they put a little magic in the college football playoff, bring back up those ratings, upset Alabama because of what they had to face throughout the year and the tough schedule they played. They got experience, and their guys take on the tough Clemson team in the national championship. And I think experience of being there last year will take Clemson over USC, and Clemson takes the dub pretty easily. I see like a 35-21 game, 35-24. Not too close, but enough to keep it interesting. So we're all in agreement that Clemson wins the national championship. So
Yes.
let's go to our little team previews. Dan, we've heard your bias Notre Dame. What's Notre Dame need to look out for this upcoming season?
Well, Notre Dame returns 5 starters on offense and 5 on defense. They have arguably one of the best offenses in the country under Zaire or Kaiser. The offensive line is looking great, even though they lost the number 6 overall pick in Ronnie Stanley. But people still think the Irish have the best O-line in the country. They're led by junior tackle Mike McGlinchey and sophomore guard Quentin Nelson. C.J. Forsyth was lost in the backfield, but the Irish bring back Josh Adams and Terrion Folston from injury. The receiving corps should be very interesting, though. They're losing 4 receivers from last year with Chris Brown, Amir Carlisle, and Corey Robinson due to injury, and Will Fuller, a first-round pick of the Texans. That means guys are going to have to step up, including Torrey Hunter Jr., who was projected out of a breakout year as Indy's number 1 receiver. Now, the defense is going to have to play much better than last year if the Irish want to do something great. They lose one of the best players to ever come through South Bend with Jalen Smith, and then Joe Schmidt is gone, which some people think could be a step up from last year with Miles Morgan filling that position. The secondary loses Kavari Russell, but gets back Drew Tranquil and Sean Crawford from injury. One man that will need to step up is Max Redfield. He hasn't really shown his 5-star potential yet, but maybe we'll see something great in the senior season with the Irish. So with a talented team and an offense that will dominate, I've got the Irish going 11-1 and making it to the college football playoff.
So the running back conversation's an interesting one. Folston got hurt, if I remember correctly, the first play of the season last year, right? And
it wasn't the first play, but it was
early in the first game, yeah. And Josh Adams, I went to a game and he had a great game against, I think it was Wake Forest, or I don't remember who, but Josh Adams showed a lot of potential. Who's the starting running back coming into week 1?
I think most likely Terrion Folston, but both are going to get plenty of carries because Josh Adams had a great year last year.
And then at the quarterback spot, Kaiser Zaire, who starts week 1.
Kaiser will start week 1, I think. That's basically what everybody's saying. But I do think Zaire should start. I just don't think that somebody who got hurt should lose his job because he got injured. I just think that's bad. I don't like that.
Alex Smith learned that the hard way with Colin Kaepernick. But, all right, Joe, you had the Indiana Hoosiers, your favorite team, and maybe an interesting year. I was told to throw out from Dylan Staggy, one of our other Sports Sermon members. He projects them to win 8 games, a big IU fan. I was told to get that in there. But, Joe, what's the team preview for Indiana?
Well, Indiana football's not something to always watch for. Like, Indiana basketball is more something to watch for college basketball. But college football, they're not a horrible team. I think Dylan's right. They probably will win about 8 games this year. Last year, they made it to the bowl game, Pinstripe Bowl game against Duke, and they lost to that field goal call. I'm not going to say anything about it. Still think they won that game. But, their defense really just step up. My Westfield alumni, Jacob Robinson, should be a starter this year. Be interesting to see. And their offense, they lose Jordan Howard, but they still got, and they lose Sudfield, but he wasn't that great of a quarterback. The receiving corps is going to be good, for sure. See who they put at quarterbacks in those. Running back, they had some guys that stepped up when Howard was injured last year. It'll be interesting to see. I don't think they'll be great. They'll still make the bowl game, but and then they're in the Big Ten conference. It's interesting to see, but they're not going to be that great.
Yeah, the receiving core you talked about is led by Garin Catholic alumni Mitchell Page. So great to see him working out there.
Yeah, Mitchell's very good.
Yeah, he definitely made his name known last year. But I've got the Michigan State Spartans as my team preview, and kind of an interesting year it's going to be because we obviously lost a lot of key players to the draft, and just because they were seniors, you lost a stud in Shalik Calhoun. You lost Connor Cook, who both went to my Raiders, so that was pretty lucky for me. But Connor Cook, Shalik Calhoun, you lost Aaron Burbridge to the Niners. McGarrett Kings is gone as a senior. You lost just 2 offensive linemen. You lost a lot of key starters. And so Michigan State's got a lot of question marks on both sides of the ball. At quarterback, obviously, like I said, Connor Cook is gone. And so they're going to rely on Tyler O'Connor, the senior who has not got much playing time because he was just 1 year behind Connor Cook. And Cook was a 3-year starter who kind of played his whole career. And so O'Connor didn't get too many reps. He played against, if you guys remember him, against Ohio State. He managed the game enough to get them the win and eventually get the game-winning field goal by Michael Geiger. And so I think he will be the starter is what it looks like. There's still a little bit of a battle between him and Damian Terry. Damian Terry is more of a running quarterback, does not have as great of an arm as Tyler O'Connor. But especially on the offensive line, we've got even more questions as you lose Jack Conklin and Jack Allen, the two big guys, our main linemen are both gone now. Conklin went to the Titans, and Jack Allen went undrafted. I forget where he went now. But losing both those guys is going to be killer because our running backs struggled last year, but with L.J. Scott and Madre London getting another year, they could be productive this year, but if they've got no offensive line help, it's going to be rough. And then the other position is going to be the cornerbacks. Our secondary is depleted this year. Not going to be great. So, looking at that, I see a 9-3 record. I think they could go as low as 8-4 if they lose to Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and then possibly they lose a game to either Maryland or Wisconsin. So I could see them going as low as 8-4 and getting as high as 8-2. I could see them beating Ohio State possibly because they get them at home. And Ohio State lost as many starters, if not more, than Michigan State did, losing Cardale, Ezekiel Elliott. You guys all know all of their starters that are gone. So I could see if Michigan State's having a really good year, maybe go 10-2, but I don't think they're going to be that great. I think it's going to be an off year for the Spartans, and I think Mark D'Antonio, though, he's a good enough coach where he'll be able to get us at least 9 wins, get us to a bowl, or at least 8 wins, get them to a bowl game, and try to rebuild for next year as you got to get freshman quarterback Messiah DeWeaver ready to go as a sophomore. So, yeah, I see 9-3, 8-4, 10-2, somewhere around there for Michigan State going into this year. But speaking of teams that are going to have off years or super good years like Dan predicts with Notre Dame, who is your guys' surprising team of the year? Joe, you can start. The one team that's going to surprise us all, good or bad.
Who do I think? I truly believe that Michigan's going to be the team. I mean, yeah, they were good last year, but they're really going to step up their game this year. And I think they'll have them in the college football playoffs. But I think they surprise a lot of people. But
Dan?
Well, my surprise team has got to be Georgia. Like I talked about before, the schedule is not that hard for an SEC schedule. I think they will upset Bama in the SEC title. The first-year head coach, Kirby Smart, is one of the top recruits coming in with Jacob Eason. Then you got Nick Chubb coming back with 7 returning starters on offense and 6 on defense. The Bulldogs went 10-3 last year, losing to Alabama, Tennessee, and Florida. Nick Chubb was sidelined due to injury in the Tennessee game. And if you look back at the scores, Georgia scored at least 31 or more points in every game except one that Nick Chubb played in. Then when he got injured, the 7 games they played after, Georgia never scored more than 27 in a game. So with Nick Chubb back, the Georgia Bulldogs could do something really special.
Yeah, I think Georgia can have a good year. I don't know about college football playoff, but I think they could have a good year, get into a New Year's Eve bowl, New Year's Day bowl, something like that. But I don't know about college football. What?
Go ahead.
Okay, but moving on to my surprising team of the year, I've kind of got two, one good and one bad. My bad, surprising team is going to be Stanford. You've heard a lot about how they're going to be top 5, top 10 teams. Dan and his rankings, you'll have to wait to see where he puts them. Check out those on WordPress and on Twitter to find out where Dan ranks Stanford and other teams. But I have Stanford not going to have an awful year this year, going to fall outside the top 25, and at the end of the year not be ranked. The reason I think that is they're not going to have a quarterback as good as Kevin Hogan was. He might not have been a big stats and not have the best stats, but he was one of the smartest quarterbacks in college football last year and managed the game so well so that McCaffrey could do his thing. And I think without a true game manager of a quarterback, McCaffrey's going to struggle because they will not have a passing game. And so I think McCaffrey will have a good year, but not as good as he did last year without Hogan. So I see Stanford having an off year, and I could see them going. I think they'll lose to USC. They lose to Notre Dame. I think they could potentially lose to Oregon and possibly USC. So I could see them going 8-4, 9-3. So I think Stanford has an off year. And my surprise team for good, you already heard about Florida State. I think they squeak into the college football playoff without playing on conference championship weekend. You've got Dalvin Cook, Sean McGuire / DeAndre Francois, and then their receiving core led by Travis Rudolph and Kermit Whitfield. I think those two are going to be too good to stop for most cornerbacks, unguardable, and I think Florida State's going to surprise a lot of people this year. So, Dan, to wrap all this up, what's our sports Bible quote of the week?
Well, my sports Bible quote is from Lou Holtz, great Notre Dame coach. You were not born a winner, and you were not born a loser. You are what you make yourself to be. So this quote just shows that whatever team you are, you control your own destiny. Any team can win it with the right attitude.
All right, that's a good quote to start off college football. So before we go, make sure you follow us at The Sportz Sermon, Sports with a Z on Twitter. Follow us on WordPress. We've got a lot of good articles coming out, including Dan's rankings, college football, and then Dylan Staggy and I will be working on some divisional previews in the NFL, and we just finished up some fantasy football things. So make sure you check out all of our articles on WordPress. Our account is The Sportz Sermon again. Thank you, Joe, for joining us on The Sportz Sermon. It should be a great year coming up with you now joining the squad. It should be fun. Make sure you follow us, and thank you to all of our listeners, and we will see you next time for an NFL/fantasy football type preview. Stay tuned, guys. See ya.